As we go through the Bible in the One Year Bible for our devotion today, we are on June 25th, and we're going to look at our New Testament reading from Acts chapter 16, verse 16 and following. So, Paul and his co-workers, after the conversion of Lydia, stayed in Philippi for at least a week, and they were once again headed to the place of prayer on the Sabbath when they met a slave girl. This slave girl was said to have a, quote, python spirit in Greek, meaning that, like the oracle at Delphi, she was serving, allegedly, as the mouthpiece of the false god Apollo. It was believed that Apollo was embodied at Delphi in a snake, a python, and so that's where this comes from. As Luke writes the book of Acts, this is a case of, as far as he is concerned, and as far as we are concerned, possession by an evil spirit. So an exorcism is required. Now this girl had brought her owners, she was a slave, a lot of money because she was serving as a fortune teller for hire. She followed Paul and Silas around, though, saying, "These men who proclaim to you a way of salvation are slaves of the highest God," or the Most High God. So, though it might sound remotely helpful, her words were misleading. The people would not have thought of the one true God. They would not have thought of the Lord or Yahweh unless they happened to be Jewish or an early convert to Christianity. There were many so-called highest gods, and the typical hearer, being a pagan, would understand her talking about whatever false god they considered to be the top of the heap of all the false gods that they worshiped. So this wasn't monotheism at all that they would have considered the words of this slave girl to be. So it was a problem. And this went on for days. And, even when she talked about salvation, that was misleading too, because it could mean just whatever they wanted it to mean. Health or good fortune or anything like that. Well, what Paul did, of course, is he turned and spoke to the evil spirit, which was speaking through the girl, and ordered it to come out of the girl in the name of Jesus. So, when the people making money from the girl lost this means of making money, they naturally sought to take out their frustration on Paul and Silas, had them dragged off to court. This indicates that the owners of the slave girl had considerable wealth and social standing. Otherwise, they would not risk going to court and probably would have very little chance of success, and things would go against them in a very unpleasant way. So, once in court, Paul and Silas are described by their enemies as being rabble-rousers, Jews, and advocates of customs unlawful for, quote, us Romans. In other words, the accusers have their own ethos or moral nature and guiding beliefs as Roman citizens, and they now attempt to destroy the ethos or character of Paul and Silas by making an emotional appeal to the basic fear of foreigners and to the suspicion that the people already had about Jews and their customs. The officials there sensed that they needed to act quickly, so they had the missionaries stripped and beaten with rods. So if you're unfamiliar with that, I'll talk about that a little bit. So this was the task of officials called lictores, who carried a bundle of rods that was not merely the symbol of Roman justice and authority, but also the actual means used to inflict, quote, lighter punishments or inducements to confession. So here I'm going to show you a painting. It is Raphael's conversion of the proconsul. And if you look in this picture, as we look on to the left of the magistrate, to the left of the proconsul, you can see the lectores as they were carrying these bundles of rods, and the name for these rods, of course, is fasces, where we get the term ultimately fascism from. So, well, that's kind of another wormhole to go down, but it's interesting how this kind of intersects with that. So, that is why you would not go to court unless you were wealthy and had a good chance of winning. So, what follows then, after Paul and Silas are jailed, is how Paul and Silas escape from prison, how they convert the jailer and his family, and ultimately are released and have an apology given to them by the officials for treating a Roman citizen in this way, since Paul was a Roman citizen. Now, it's amazing that even though, as I talk about this, there are very foreign cultural elements to it, these circumstances still reflect modern day life as we know it. There are plenty of people that try to replace the ethos of Christianity with their own value system, with their own ethos, and try to drag Christians' reputations through the mud. And there are many people still spreading religious talk that might sound true at first, but is actually very misleading. For example, Jehovah's Witnesses use many of the same words that Christians do, but they always mean something very different from the way that we use these words. And there may be people that claim to be spiritual leaders, but they actually lead people astray from faith in Jesus Christ. And on top of that, there are many people who would do anything for money, and many people who make money by taking advantage of others. And there are many who prey on the many irrational fears that people have, including kind of an innate fear of outsiders. So, as we look at our reading from Acts, it seems like it's almost ripped out of today's headlines in some ways. And here is important to remember, of course, as Christians, though we are in the world, we need to make sure that we are not of it. Well, God be with you and bless you, and I'll look forward to talking with you